All right, welcome to podcast to be named later. But we're just two small church pastors, and we really do care about other pastors. And we don't know that we have a lot to offer. You know, we're not Harvard educated, and
Do they educate pastors at Harvard?
Sure, they do, I guess.
They do.
Nor do we have like huge, big mega churches that like everybody wants to be at, and we don't get thousands of online watchers every week. We're just two normal pastors, but we really.
I can't even grow hair.
I can. I just choose not to. I think this looks good.
It does. It looks great.
Yeah. So, but we just want to help you out in any way we can. We want to commiserate with you about the situations that you deal with, that we know we deal with as well. And we just want to try to together kind of find a path to go forward that honors Jesus and really helps people to grow in their faith. So that's what this podcast is going to be about. It's just commiserating with each other, and also just commissioning us to move forward and hang on to Jesus and his mission.
You might want to know a little bit about us in brief. So Aaron, many years ago was my Bible study leader in college. And we've known each other that was half a year ago. So
I don't think I wore my pants very often back then.
No. And the freshman hall, many people did not. We're not right now on this Zoom call either.
That's right. You never know.
But I've been pastoring at Leesburg Grace Church in Leesburg, Indiana, small town Indiana, for the past 14 years. And I love my church congregation. Before COVID, we averaged a little over 100 people, all ages and all sizes. Everyone was beautiful. And since the pandemic, we've been about 60 people. 60% is back in the building, 15% online, and 20% were raptured. Actually, they just disappeared.
Okay, that's all you got? That's your bio?
That's my, and I've written commentaries, and I have 3 children and a lovely wife, and yeah.
There you go. He's a great guy. He's written 3 commentaries for Kriegel series, and one of them's published now, or 2
are published.
2 are published. So
I should have them up in the background.
So yeah, we're gonna put those up in the background next time, and you need to go buy them on Amazon. More than buy them though, just also put good reviews on Amazon. He'll like that. There you go. So don't let him be humble. I mean, he's a world-renowned author.
Harvard trained.
He wishes. He's also got all sorts of awards on this wall that shows that he's smart. So my name's Aaron Peer. I've been a pastor for 20 years almost at a small church called Charter Oak Church. It's just in the middle of the country, between Churubusco, Indiana, and Albany, Indiana. And we're going to be talking about the pandemic here today, so that's why Tim mentioned it. So our church was about a little over 100 before the pandemic hit as far as in-person attendance. Now we're probably around 50 to 60 that have come back in person. And we got a bunch of other people that are watching online. And, I hope one day when this is over, everybody returns. But we'll see. We were just talking about statistics here a second ago. And it does seem like there's going to be a lot of people that might not come back after this. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, we were sharing statistics we've read. I have keyed into the Barna group with the Barna Access, and their prediction is about 20% of people will just be leaving the church, not my church, the church. And so you always have a plus and minus with that. And I think you had a slightly higher statistic that you saw of people who would probably be leaving the church.
Yeah, I saw that the third of people have returned, and mine was from Lifeway, I think. Did you say yours was from Lifeway?
Barna.
Okay, so I saw a survey from Lifeway that seemed to suggest a third of the church approximately has returned to in-person services. There is a third of the church that's still connected but online only, and then probably another third of the church that isn't doing anything. Now, who knows once this is over whether they'll come back or not. This article that I read seemed to suggest that they might not come back, not just because of the health emergency, but just because of, other things that maybe they've seen from the church through this that they didn't appreciate, whether that be the mixing of politics and the religion a little too closely, or whether that be just, people that aren't of their particular persuasion on something.
And if you want to timestamp this recording, this was 1 week from the date that people went into the Capitol and they had flags that said, Jesus is my savior and Trump is my president. And not everybody in there went in as a political religious zealot. Some people just went in for political reasons, but there's definitely an optic out there that the church has wholesale bought into nationalism, which if I've read my Bible right, like that was a big problem in the Old Testament too. God had wanted Israel to reach the nations, and Israel was content being the blessed people by themselves. And I think sometimes that can be a problem for the church in America too. But that's not our topic today.
No, that's not our topic. But it does fit into that, because I mean, what we really want to talk about is like, how do we lead during this pandemic? How do we maintain some sort of unity? Because this is one thing that I've learned myself over the past year, is there's a lot of issues that you can just avoid. Like, say, group A believes this, and group B in your church believes that, and you know who you can talk about what with. And you can talk about this with group A, and I'm not going to mention that in front of group B. But when it came to how are we going to do church in light of a global pandemic, we have to make church-wide decisions that are seen by some as political. The entire time, especially last March, April, May, June, I wasn't thinking about this in political terms. I was just trying to think, how can I keep my people the safest? Somehow it got turned into, well, this is the red position and this is the blue position, which I was very disappointed in. But I just wanted to help people. I just wanted to make sure that we kept people safe, but at the same time, we were keeping some sort of measure of church going. And it was hard to do. And so I learned, that you got to make a choice. You can't just not choose to do anything, because that is in itself is a choice. And so you kind of had to put your foot down somewhere. I don't know where your particular church did. What did Leesburg do?
Well, there's a lot, and it's not even just, is this a political decision? Is this red versus blue? But I think one of the things I saw, I think Satan's, one of his number one tactics is to create disunity in the church. I think that we will all struggle with moral problems throughout the rest of our life, but if we can argue about things that can seem trivial or things that are very divisive, that probably has the enemy pretty happy. So for us, I think that the language I heard sometimes is you're choosing fear over faith or fear over freedom. And you can put political language behind that, but really you're like pitting people in one of two camps. Even on Sunday mornings, I talk to the on-site audience and the online audience, and you can feel like you have two different churches that are meeting. So you can find division in all sorts of things. Mm-hmm. As far as what we did with the pandemic was, we tried to be as respectful of the guidelines from the CDC and WHO and our local people as possible. I put out a video. And we made changes. And one of the things that's difficult is when you don't have all the information, you go with what you know. And then as you get more information, you make adjustments. I think sometimes people looked at that as like, oh, nobody knows anything. Well, yeah, it's a novel coronavirus.
Brand new.
So
don't know anything about it.
So there's actually humility in making changes.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes as a leader, you're humble enough to say, now we have new information, we're making changes. From the very beginning, though, we spaced out seats. From the very beginning, we found creative ways to meet or try to meet people's needs when our state shut down. We had to pivot to online. That's the language they use in all these podcasts. We had to pivot. We pivoted. So we pivoted. And then when we were allowed to open our doors and pivot back in, we took a couple weeks to figure out how we were going to do that. We cut down our programming to bare bones and then integrated some of that and then stopped it as cases went up. We moved outside for worship for a couple of months. Then we moved back inside. We asked people to wear masks. We don't police masks. So it's like, we've tried lots of things, but one of the things we consistently did is said, remember the mission of our church, whether we're meeting online or off site. Here's the mission of our church.
Yeah.
And God has called us to love each other. So we're trying to live a life of love, try to find ways to stay connected. If you can't see people in the building, reach out to people otherwise. And some people were just great at that by themselves, which was encouraging. And then we did try to find creative ways to keep people excited about getting together and feel safe while doing it, safe enough while doing it. You just have to communicate, I guess, and try new things. That's what we did. I don't know that we did it great, but that's what we did. What about you?
Yeah, we did a lot of the same things. We went down to bare bones. I mean, the stuff I was reading earlier on was that when you were around people for longer periods of time, that's when the transmission happens more readily. So I just tried to, the things I knew, transmitted it, I tried to cut down on them. So I didn't think it was smart to be there for Sunday school and church at the same time. So we canceled Sunday school. We shortened the church service down from an hour and a half to an hour. We tried to make...
That's hard to do with preaching.
Well, I just made the whole service preaching.
Okay.
We cut everybody else. Just Aaron. That's all people are there for anyway. No? Okay. No. So cut the service down. Unfortunately, we had to get rid of the nursery and children's church. And basically because a lot of the people that were running those weren't comfortable coming to in-person services. So we still haven't got those started back up. I'm hoping by March we can get those started back up.
You realize as you're making plans, I talk about humility, is that things around you can change so fast that you can say in March, we hope to do that, but it's a hope.
Like James and James 4, right? God willing.
Yes.
If God wills it, then we're going to go to this city or that city. If God wills it, we hope. Because I remember back in August, things started looking up in our area. And so I had, we put the church picnic back on and baptism service. And, I was going to start Sunday school back up and nursery. And then late August, it just started exploding again around us. And we just had, I had to get up front and kind of eat crow a little bit and say, I know we were planning on doing this, but the situation on the ground has changed and we're going to have to take a step backward. And that was really hard. That was hard to do.
The other thing in the midst of this, I'm going to ask you a question in a moment, is that you're making these decisions for the benefit of the people in your church because you're serving them as a pastor, you're serving the people in the church and trying to maintain a healthy but vibrant community. But you also are aware of the optics of the people who look into your church. And so if you're a church that's just like, CDC doesn't know anything, local officials, they're morons, and you carry yourself with that sort of attitude, people in the community are looking, they're like, why is their parking lot full when we're under a government mandated shutdown? These people are rebels. And so you want to be aware of the optics of outsiders. They also have a chance to peek into your online services now, because pretty much every church has figured out how to do online service. So you're creating a new window into how you do worship and preaching. So that's a good part of this, is that the world is actually watching. Your neighbors are watching how you do this. And I was curious for you, though, we're both small church pastors. How did you make these decisions? Is this like Aaron thinking, we should do this? I'm reading the CDC, I think we should do this, or what's your...
Yeah, I had, I have an elder board of 3 and then me, so 4 of us. So most of the decisions were run through our elder board. We didn't bring in the whole church council, or we didn't bring in the whole church in order to vote on anything. Problem was that my elder board was, I had one that was pretty far on one side and that wanted to be moved towards more safety issues, another one that wanted to move towards opening up. And so there were 2 of us in the middle who were trying to just try to think best through what the CDC says, what kind of size. I think for a while it was 50, under 50, and then it was under 20. And so it just kept changing. And I think that was good. It was good to have a mix of opinions, and so that the 4 of us could really hash it out and decide what's best for the church. And, we tried to be very upfront with the church. And I think that's probably one of the key takeaways here, is communicating well, okay, this is what we're doing, and here is why we are doing it. Here is the motive, and asking people to give us the benefit of the doubt, because we might change our mind in a month, but it's not because we were lying before or because we're big hypocrites. It's because we want to be sensitive to the new information that's coming out. We want to make sure that we're doing what's best. And I kept telling my elder board, the last thing we want is to be sitting at a funeral because we made poor choices here. And if we kept that in mind, like we don't want any of our senior saints or our people with pre-existing conditions, we don't want them harmed by this in any way. And if we do everything we can do within common sense, and then we can look back at it and we can say, at least we did what we could do, rather than, we threw caution to the wind, and there are some casualties, but so what? We do not want that.
Yeah. So trust in your leaders is a foundation for unity. If you don't have trust in your leaders, you're going to have disunity, but trust in your leaders is a foundation for unity. And one of the ways you build that trust is communicate. Even when you make changes, admit, like, we have new information. I'm going to be humble about this. We're asking in advance for leniency, for grace, for flexibility. All that's really important with your church.
Yeah. I mean, I think when the church understands that the leadership is trying to do what is best for them, and maybe it's not going to be perfect, and maybe their decisions aren't going to be the best, and maybe we'll have to refine in the future. If you're just communicating that, I have found, I remember, I think it was a month ago, I had to make a big change. I had to take a step back on what we were going to do. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I got up front and I said, okay, this is the change we're making. As an elder board, we decided to make this change because of such and such. I think it was maybe our harvest dinner or something. We had to cancel our harvest dinner at the last minute.
Yeah, we're in Indiana. Just to remind you, we have harvest dinners.
We have harvest dinners.
Context.
Lots of farmers. And so I was like, I knew there were going to be a few people that are upset. But when I got done doing the announcements, the whole church gave a round of applause.
Huh.
And I was like, I did not expect a round of applause. I expected a swift kick on my way out the door. So I really do think that if we communicate to people, not just what we're doing, but why we're doing it, and maybe even also add on a little bit of humility, like, we're just trying to do the best we can. And that with the information we have, we think this is best. I think most people are going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I mean, we had some at our church that did not necessarily care to give the benefit of the doubt, but I would say 99% of people did, which is, in a church of 100. You can do the math.
I think too, one of the things you want to communicate is our aim is to be like Jesus, or tie it to the overall mission of your church or the church, and in becoming like Jesus, modeling Jesus, imitating Jesus. Jesus made sacrifices for people, and I don't always like wearing a mask. I don't always like being separated from people by a distance, or missing the handshake and the hug. I can do it for a period of time if that creates a more safe environment, if that is a sacrifice that is going to overall contribute to the health of our church. And that's something I think Jesus would have done. You want to be somewhat cautious about that. Like, what would Jesus do? Well, you're not doing it the Jesus way. You don't want to shame people. There's enough of that going around online, but I do want to consistently call my people and model myself after the life of Jesus the best I can.
Yeah, because I'm the same way. I hate the phone. I don't like to call people. I rather than make a 5-minute phone call, I'd rather drive an hour to see you face to face and talk with you.
Which is why we're not doing this by Zoom today. Aaron wanted to hang out with me.
I did. I liked him.
Thanks, Aaron.
But now I've lost my train of thought.
Oh, yeah. You hate the phone.
Oh, I hate the phone. That's right. I do hate the phone.
He hates the phone.
So for me, this was a big adjustment, not being able to do, we're small church pastors, so we do visitation quite a bit.
That's where we knock on the front door of our parishioners with a loaf of bread and ask if we can come, and
without any permission, without any invitation, we just show up.
Look at their bookshelves and their DVD cases and their browser history, and they can confess their sins to us. No, it's not.
That's what you do at visitation?
That's why nobody's like,
I need to take notes. What do you do again? It's not what I do. All right. So what I did is I know that I'm not going to call people like I should. So I gave a list to my elders of, a third of the church, a third of the church, a third of the church, to the 3 elders. And I said, you call these people every week. And man, they did an amazing job of calling people and really helping to keep people connected. And, even with the certain segment that's still not there in person yet, still trying to my elders are still reaching out to them, and I'm doing it too. Don't think I'm just like shirking my duties or anything.
I was going to say, what's the point? A third of them aren't going to come back anyway. Why call them? No,
A third of Aaron's salary needs to go bye because he doesn't visit anymore. But so yeah, I mean, there's creative ways that we can, even though there's distance created by this pandemic, I think we can kind of try to bridge that distance by recruiting people from our congregations too, to be able to reach out to each other and stick with the mission of Jesus. I mean, that's what we're supposed to do, is love and encourage one another on towards love and good deeds. And I think that this pandemic has really tried to make us be more creative in how we do that, from online services to personal phone calls to, whatever it might be. I mean, I think maybe there's a lot of things that we've taken from this past year that we can continue on in the future.
I would even just brag on a few people at my church, just sharing stories. There's a young lady at our church who started a Bible study through Zoom with a couple other moms, and they've been meeting for the past month. They just were like, we need to get together and study the Bible. And so they even had a Bible study in the snow around a campfire recently, just because they wanted to be together outside. I thought that was great.
Wow, that is great.
I think about early on, and I know we're 10 months into this and people have been fatigued. This was something early on that was really encouraging, was a group of our young mothers wanted to do something for people who might be in need, especially when people were losing work hours. So they contacted me and some other people and asked about financial needs, physical needs. And I would say we went around to 10 or 15 families and dropped off care baskets, gift cards, those kind of things. Someone gave their money that the government gave them directly to a deacon fund, so it could be given away to people's financial needs. That kind of stuff is super encouraging at our church. And then other people are learning new skills, how to run a virtual service, and we're still benefiting from that. So I would say that's been neat. And when you can celebrate those kind of stories, I think it builds the kind of unity that you want in the right way, rather than just saying, here's what we can't do and commiserating about it. And it's frustrating, finding those bright spots that you can celebrate. And I think what you celebrate tends to be replicated. And so maybe someone will show up at my house with a gift card pretty soon.
That's it. It's not going to be me. Sorry, Tim.
No, okay.
I'd love to show up at your house, but not with a gift card. Yeah. So, I mean, anything else that you've kind of found helpful as you kind of, I mean, again, our world has been upended over the past year, in so many different ways, but definitely the pandemic has hit the church, had to shake up a lot of the ways that we do things. So, we've tried to help you out with some of the things that, we were able to experience and do. And so, Tim, do you have anything else?
I would say, I mean, this was a different time because I didn't have as much time, one-on-one time with people in my church. I spent more time reading. I spent more time researching. I spent more personal time checking out courses and online material. I was trying to build myself as a leader. And so I found that to be important, giving myself permission to do that. I even took naps sometimes, which was great.
He's got a couch over here.
I do have a couch over there. Took naps on it.
In his office.
So that was good. I think I met with a lot of other pastors during this season. Some of it was just like through text and email, some of it on Zoom meetings, and we did some commiserating. We shared some of the things that we were struggling with. We learned from each other ideas. I think I've formed stronger bonds with other pastors through this time, and that's been really helpful. And then as far as like church life goes, I did try to reach out to people and find out where they're at. What's online church like for you? What are you willing to help with? What are you still concerned about? I used some polls to do that, some anecdotal questions and interviews. So that gives me a bit of a read from people in my church rather than me trying to guess. I could definitely do better at that. But getting some of that feedback helps me continue to work forward.
Yeah. And then one last thing I would add, I think we might have a mutual friend on Facebook, but he is a pastor of a small church in Indiana as well. And he went back to 1918 and found the minutes from his church meeting when the Spanish flu was going on, and just the church report and what the people were saying about it, and how they were taking advantage of new technology like the telephone to really keep people connected, even though they had to shut down in-person services. And when I read that, it was so encouraging to think, this isn't new. This has happened before, and people were able to survive it, and they were able to come through the other side. I think he said that their church did 50 funerals that year. So if you think about that, that's a funeral almost every week.
Wow.
And I don't think it was really that big of a church. And so, I mean, I got up on a Sunday morning and I talked about that for like 4 or 5 minutes, and I read from those churches' minutes about, and the pastor and the elders way back in 1918 were upbeat about the future. And so I think we always need historical perspective, because I think sometimes when you're in a problem, you think nobody's ever dealt with this before. I'm the first person that's had to deal with this. And that's never true. Everything that goes around comes around. I think somebody said that in the Old Testament. Ecclesiastes. Yeah, I think that's biblical. So, and I think that's important for people to understand, hey, people have done this before and they got through it. And we're going to go back. We're going to go through it too, but we're going to stick to the basics of loving Jesus. We're going to stick to the basics of spurring one another on toward love and good deeds, and we'll get through it too. We hope to talk to you more in the future. And so we'd like to thank you for joining us.